fast. Homeschool and extracurriculars, so we covered that last night, and we got what we were looking for out of that. It's too late in the year to try to get, there are spring tryouts for the fall sports, and so we're too late into that game. We can't get in special dispensation, and so we really had to forego trying to do something this year. But what we got on record, and the plan is that we've got to put a committee together that's made up of coaches and homeschool parents and public school parents and school board trustees, maybe one or more, but and Roski herself, or maybe one of her designees. Anyway, we're going to get on that. But I want to get on to off of that. And so, I'm sorry, so the rest of that story is that the plan is that next year we'll start a pilot program to bring homeschool kids into those extracurricular activities. That is open. Thanks to you guys. So then, also, especially thanks to you guys. Oh, listen, I've got slides.
Like what?
Not that. This one. So I was going to say on the Commissioner's Court business, the jail bond and the Master Thoroughfares plan is part of, if you want to read more about that, is on the voter guide. So that voter guide is under development so you'll just see more of that. But there's information on there about both of those bonds and their Prop A and Prop B, and then Props 1 through 17 for the state are also on there, and then we're working on getting candidates' names on there as well. But that QR code will take you to that page. So, and then look at this new line. I like this one. Greg said it offhand the other day, and I took it now as our mantra. Republicans do Republican things. So, all right, so the next one, I'm sorry, I'm getting cut off here. All right, this is your call to action. So we had a big discussion last night at the school board meeting about insurance. The insurance company was just soaking the school district for $250,000 a year for I don't even know how many years back. And so we made the point last night to say we could have spent that money in a lot better ways. As soon as they had some competition, that price came way down. And so I want to stick it to those guys. And punishment for doing that to us by getting their competitor into that slot. So last night I made a motion to do that, and they didn't know what to do with it. I went right from just having discussion into a motion, and they were not ready for it. And so that was a lot of fun to play with them that way. But they realized, because some of you were out in that crowd in the gallery clapping, and not to feed my ego, but when you guys were clapping when some of those things were going on, and it told them that this crowd of voters are out there, and some of them are up for re-election, and so they saw that, and it made a difference. And so this is your call to action. I need you there on Friday morning at 8 o'clock. Come show up, put your butts in those chairs. Sign up to speak if you want. If you don't, just your butts in chairs is enough. So get there for us, please. We want to take that thing all the way through there. So having Karen next to me has been such a great asset. So we need to get these guys elected. Jessica, Monica, David, get them into those spots. So we can get them into there soon enough. But competition and the free market paid off on that. The other thing that we talked about was tax rate reduction. It really is a tax rate reduction, and you pay less than you would have if we changed it. If we had not changed it, it saves the average Granbury taxpayer $300 a year, but it's still labeled as a tax increase. I looked up the language on that, and it says if it's not no net new tax budget, that it counts as a tax increase. So we will pay a little less on it, but anyway, vote there you go. I'll have vote right up there anyway. This, by the way, these QR codes, that one takes you to the agenda for Monday or Friday's meeting, Friday at 8 o'clock. Please, you guys. And then that other one is an app you get there if you don't know where the admin really is. Thank you, Charles.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Something really bad. We'll all stick together. If you're a member of the club, you get a newsletter each month. Looks kind of like this, okay? And this month, the newsletter is focusing on thirsty data centers and how much water they're using and what's the proposed water in the next 5 years. And so, like, by 2025, they're proposing that 49 billion gallons of water will be used by data centers only. And by 2030, it would be 399 billion. So as these data centers are being built, I mean, I'm a native Texan, and I know Texas is not a wet state. And there's 64 water facilities in Texas right now that are having to do a water save plan because they don't have enough water. So I don't know what to do about this, but I want to bring it to you guys so we can think about this as they want to bring in more power plants, more data centers, more BESS systems here in Hood County. Also, the next part of it is about sorry, new paper. The Texas Energy Scam, and this has to do with power. So, another report on the power, and then we have the 17 constitutional amendments on here, and the people running for local elections in November 4th. So if you're not a member, you need to sign up, become a member, so you can get this great newsletter.
Amen.
Okay. Let's see. I have the school board, and I have the city council candidate directly, but I do remember the members that are running for school board here tonight, and so I'd like to invite each one at a time to come and give a couple minutes about who they are, why are they running, and what place they're running in. So Monica, you're first with place 5.
Thank you. Bless you. Okay.
Thank you, Sharon. I love Sharon. She's my hero. Okay, my name is Monica Brown. I am running for place 7. And I'm running because, like many of you, I care deeply about the direction of our school, the integrity of our tax dollars, and most importantly, our entire children's future. Over the past few years, this community has made its voice clear. We've seen 3 bonds defeated, bond proposals, so that's a bravo to us, right? And just as important as what we spend is how transparent we are. So I will push to ensure that those MOUs, those contracts and informal agreements are on the website. It would save a lot of confusion if we were given the information they had been hiding in. And when I said defeating bonds, I mean ridiculous bonds. I'm not talking about solid, needs for growth. So that's one. And then the appraisal district is another one that I want to support our mayor in getting a forensic audit for the appraisal district, and also, to be willing to disapprove their budget if it's a bad one. It has been so far. So there's a lot that needs to happen there. I am also for a no new revenue tax rate, and even lower. I was talking to Andrew, who's going to explain some of that tonight. That's where I first heard about it, and last year I spoke about it at a school board meeting. So I take it as a win what they did last night as well, so I say bravo to that. And then they're 1 in 3 GISD graduates are considered college ready, and I know some go off to trade schools and things, but I want to stay strong and steady in developing reading and math skills where students think critically. They have historical content and inspirational stories in their library, so we don't have to remove anything, but let's add the good stuff back in. And then I want to use our underused community. We have a program in our schools called Communities in Schools. They voted on it last night. Every time they bring it up, I come against it. I've got their manual with me that has DEI on it. It is a national stance we have against DEI and a state stance. And I've said it every time, and it's like talking to a bag of rocks, and I'm so sorry, but that's what it's been like. And so I would like to see our own community. We have retired people here. The average age here, I think, is mid-50s and up. So we don't actually have a young community. And the growth we're experiencing is a lot of people who do not have school-age children. So equating growth to school growth is not the same. But anyway, I want to get our veterans and retirees, and especially teachers, vetted and into the classrooms, maybe 2 days a week where they're helping with reading and math. Just, being helpful to the children. So I'm going to say this last thing to bring it down. What you can count on, I will support boys in boys' restrooms and spaces, and girls in girls' restrooms and spaces. You won't have a doubt about that. I will support sound financial decisions. Like I said, no new revenue tax rate, no crazy bonds, and then much needed correction for the appraisal district. I'd like to see continued improvement for teachers and students to excel together with community involvement. I don't want a program called Communities in Schools here. I want the community in the schools. It's beautiful when they do that. And so I just started playing around. I think we did at the last minute date, and I said we'll do it. But I do have a Venmo, and I'm working on a Zelle for donations. And the enemy's already out. They're already barking. I've already made 2 podcasts where you can hear what I think. And I'm doing some things on social media. Any support you give us, any encouragement, any agreement is very, very, very we're going to need everybody, all hands on deck, to possibly put the board by adding 3 brand new trustees.
The next board candidate is David Rogers.
Woohoo!
Thank you, Sharon. It's great to be here tonight with everybody. I am David Rogers. I am running for place 6 on the Granbury Independent School Board, District 4 Trustees. I'm a 24-year law enforcement supervisor, Air Force veteran. I'm a Christian. I believe in enforcement politics. The reason I'm running for school board is because we need a return of transparency, accountability, and responsibility on the GISD Board of Trustees. Their revenues have increased over 56% the past 6 years. Their enrollment has plateaued. They've got serious questions about test scores. We need a return of integrity to the Board of Trustees. There are 3 kinds of people: those who run from the heat, those who take the heat, and those who prove the heat. And me and the conservative candidates on the school board, we are going to drain the swamp in that GISD Board of Trustees. And I'm asking for your vote. And I believe the election is November 3rd. Thank you.
The next candidate is Jessica Warren.
Good evening, conservatives. I actually didn't realize I would be given a moment to speak to you tonight, so I don't have a prepared speech. So I'm going to need you to come let me know afterwards if I did okay or not. My name is Jessica Wark. I am running for place 7. I'm actually not running against Monica. Monica's running for place 5.
I always get that wrong. I'm
So
sorry.
I get confused. I'll be quick, just to let you know who I am. I am first a child of God. I worship here in Granbury with my church family, Generations Church of Granbury. I am honored to be able to serve on the worship team of our church and with the sound team. Jeff's on the worship team with me. We sing together on the worship team often. Real honor. Next, I am that guy's wife. My husband Chris, we've been together 27 years and married for 22. We have 4 children together. Our oldest is a nurse at Cook Children's in Fort Worth. Sorry, not hospital. Cook Children's Hospital in Fort Worth. She also is at Harris Southwest. Our next is Aggie Diego. He is studying right now. He just began his 3rd year. And then we have 2 littles. We have our bigs and our littles. Our 2 littles are here with us tonight. We have one in middle school and one in elementary school. I have been a volunteer in our GISD schools for 22 years now, since our oldest was in kindergarten. Started out as a room mom, helping the teacher, and I've done several different volunteer capacities within our district. From campus volunteer positions, I've been a PTO president, and several different board positions with the PTO, campus leadership teams, district leadership teams. I've been involved in the SHAC, or CSHAC, the Health Advisory Council. I've been involved in the Federal Funds Planning Committee for the district and several other district committees for 22 years now. And I decided to run for school board because I see a real need to get our communities back into our schools, kind of like what Monica was saying earlier. We don't have a strong community presence in our schools. We don't have a parent-led environment. Our parents aren't really in control of their children's education anymore. And I know I don't feel in control of my children's education. I don't know many of our Granbury parents feel the same way. I'm running to hopefully get our communities back in our schools and to give our communities back to the schools.
Thank you.
I appreciate your support.
Okay, I'd like to have Tim come back up and join us. We have a special guest here with us tonight. Other than our big speaker on the night.
I'm not the special guest. Listen, I forgot to show you guys this though. I'm gonna keep doing this. This is that 350 bottle or 350 jar. You put your money in. There's $40 more in here than there was last week. This goes to support our candidates. So when we figure out who that is, that money will go out to them. On your own, right? You'll figure out who you're gonna give that money to. But continue doing that, please. All of us in this room would put a lot of money in their pockets, and it takes money to run these elections. This is quickly becoming my friend. Jen, stand up first, please. She is an unpolitician, a non-politician, an anti-politician like me, and we love her for that. She's a military mom and wife, strong Texan, strong American. She's strong in her faith. She has this little thing that she says about making America Christian again, starting with Texas. I like that. She's interested in God and not government. We're quickly becoming friends. So here's my friend Jen.
I'm Jen McVeigh. My sole purpose is to give the nation back to the Lord, and starting with Texans and giving the nation back to His people as well. I know that we all know that our founding fathers had zero interest in being polished politicians. They despised it so much that they ended an entire era of politicians, and they did that by building an amazing republic, empowering people based on the foundations of their faith and their freedom. They were a small group of men, and they managed to cut off all political ties to parties and monarchy. And I thought this was amazing. They turned the top off from the government to themselves on their own. They had nothing but metal and a fire in their bellies for their God and their freedom. And that fire that's in their bellies was the same one that just rose me up, and that's why I'm here today. Faith, family, and freedom, stoicism, that's what make up who we are. And yet, lately we've seen men walk away from their watch posts. They've been bastardized for their masculinity. Women spend more time fighting for their husband than fighting alongside them to protect our children. Because of this, there's been a huge attack on the nuclear family, and we now have a Texas government that's made units out of your children and your grandchildren. I'm running for governor because I believe that we're losing something so incredibly sacred. There's no way that we're going to be able to do this without God, and this has become quickly not just a physical fight, but also a spiritual one. There's a gentleman running for office on the Democratic ticket who finished seminary school so that he can fight Christians in politics. We're told that our faith does not belong here, but since we've removed it, we've allowed laws to be signed in based on impulsive passion by a small group of people that just happen to serve the interests of those who want to do us harm. We have cartels and terrorists who now work together to overlap their tactics and take us over. We have over 150,000 acres that belong to China that is here in Texas. Over 300,000 is in the U.S., and it's arguably meant to build the world's largest drug empire. Because of our size, population, and border, Texas has become a significant hub and distribution place for traffickers. We've managed to build an entire government allowing the sexualization of children and harboring criminals behind inclusive language and hurt feelings. There's an Islamic group working to build not a church for the freedom of religion, but to put a stake in the ground, annex it, and develop a government. And that government happens to cause women to dress up like beekeepers at a funeral and endorse pedophilia. Right now there's an investigation going on, and there doesn't need to be one. We need to just stop it, rip the stakes up, and say, no, you can't do that here in Texas. We have lawmakers that have done irredeemable things in negotiating and prostituting our freedoms behind closed doors. And I do believe that Texas will again lift her head and stand among the nations, but we're going to need to work together to put her skirt down first and give her her dignity back. Thank you.
Yeah. I overlooked somebody a while ago. I didn't see David Ferris sitting in the back of the room. So we do have our city council candidate here. So let's give David a couple of minutes to introduce himself.
My name is David Ferris, and I'm running for City Council of Place 2. One of the things that came up was sorry. question that came up earlier first was, why am I running? Well, as I said, first thing was I got convinced to run, thought about it, and I really want to be the guardian of your tax dollars for Greenberg. I'm not against all projects, but I think any project should be scrutinized. Financially, risk, what's it going to do to our budget? What's it going to do to the feasibility of the project plan and how long it's going to take, and is it, reasonable? Do we have the best contractors? Well, what I decided to do on mine going around door to door is I want to focus on, when I'm talking to people, I want them to consider my qualifications as opposed to my opponents. All right? So that's what my focus is on. And I mentioned why I want to run, but I want to give them the reasons as to why I think I'm the better one. Well, I mentioned, let's start with education. After high school, I started working on my degree in physics at UT. About 6 or 7 years later, I went back and I got an MBA and a master's in computer information systems at UTD. Got the education. MBA, finance, budgeting, etc. A lot of that in there. In my sophomore year, though, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I went out and got a co-op job for the summer. It was at a structural engineering firm in Grand Prairie. I went for the summer. I ended up working there full-time for the next 3 years and taking one class in a semester on my degree. But I had found what I loved, writing code. And over the next 3 years, I wrote every bit of software to do all of the structural analysis and engineering diagrams for that structural engineering firm for roof and floor truss systems. I then got contacted by somebody who wanted me to be a member of a four-person group. And the four of us, back in the late 70s, developed a software financial risk analysis and budgeting system for large Fortune 500 companies. We sold about 70 so copies and licenses of it. Base was $40,000. The largest was $200,000, and that is in 1979 dollars. From there, I went on to work 23 years at a little company called Fidelity Investments. All right. And somewhere around that time, I got married. 2 instant kids. And, they were going to Catholic private schools. And about 6 years later, for some reason, I'm looking around. I'd gotten my 3 degrees by then. My wife had gone back and gotten her degree. I had no idea, but we had no college fund. I'd been paying for everything as we went, and there just wasn't anything left. So I started teaching nights and weekends while I was working at Fidelity. And I ended up teaching in quite a number of years in the MBA program at the University of Dallas. Spent about several years, 12 years in New Hampshire. Even though I've been a lifelong Texas, I was from Texas. I was born in Fort Worth. Spent about 4 years in the zoning board of adjustments. Road warrior, you've seen me out there. So to wrap it up, I just want to have people know that my focus is going to be on being a guardian for tax dollars. Better projects, and if we don't need the project, skip it. Okay? Thank you.
So those are going to be your candidates on the November 4th ballot that are good conservative Christian candidates. So be sure you get out. November 4th election is like an off election. And we need to have everybody out there voting because the other group is going to be voting. And, they start with a D. So we need everybody out there.
She brought up the D
Next thing I want to talk about is something that's kind of been weighing on my heart quite a bit. I've been watching media a little bit off and on about the bonds and people with one idea and another person with another idea. So I wanted to try to bring some clarification. Now this clarification is how I interpreted the bonds and what, the Republican planks and what they had to say about them. And so, where I am here. So the first one's going to be Plan 67, and that's under spending restraints. Part A under that plank is about, and these are going to be very quick, and what I'm asking you to do is, now that I'm telling you about these planks, I want you to go out, look them up, read them, and make up your mind what they say, because this is my idea of what they say, and some other people have a different idea of what they say. So, anyway, Part A is about how bond or debt information should be compiled. And Part B is about voter approval for the maximum spend, not a blank check for projects on a list. We here in Granbury witnessed that, the blank check, the projects with a list, with the last school bond, which was riddled with unnecessary debt. The second one is Plan 218 under elections, which is titled Bonds or Bondage. This is the one most people in media have been focused on. But when you read it, again, it is saying bonds can be a bondage if it is entered into without a specific understanding of the amount of current debt and proposed debt. Nowhere does either one say that the Texas Republican Party expects a government entity to progress or improve property without a bond. They do say the bond proposal should be presented as a fiscal responsible bond with a payment and contingency plan in place, and gives you the guidelines to follow. So I believe the party planks say there can be necessary debt and there can be reckless debt. It's the necessary debt that we need to look at. Our roads are overcrowded, and once the state kicks off 377 project, these feeder roads will be necessary, and the spending of thousands of dollars on the jail of moving our prisoners out of the county, and that will just continue to go up. So things aren't going to get better, they'll just get worse, and sooner or later we will have to pay the debt. So I want everybody to go out and go onto the website that the county's put together, do your homework, talk with the commissioners you can, and make up your own mind of how you feel about this. The important thing is to make an educated decision so you can make an educated vote in November on these two projects. Our next speaker, speaking of the transportation project, is Nancy Samuelson to give us an overview of the Master Transportation Plan bond. This is the county, only, not for the state project on 377. That is under the supervision of TxDOT.
So thank you for that introduction. And one of the things I just wanted, if you haven't been watching the progress of this over the last year and a half, I just want you to know kind of what the progress was. And one of the things that I ran on and have tried to do since I've been in office is be transparent with the public, making sure that you know what's going on with your tax dollars, making sure that you have the opportunity to speak in Commissioner's Court, and that I'm pushing out information as much as I can so that you can be aware of where your tax dollars are going. So I wanted to, rather than showing slides up here, I want you to make sure that you know how to get to the county website. So this is on the home page of the county website, and right up there in the front says 2025 bond program. If you click on that, it'll take you to this Master Thoroughfare Plan, and then right under that it says documents. And this is an archive of all the workshops and information that's been collected over the last year and a half. We've had probably 12 workshops over the last year and a half talking about the issues with the roads, where do roads need to be built. We worked with North Central Texas COG to do analysis on traffic patterns, which is, and I'll leave these up here until I leave tonight, and I have this, and I think it's actually up there in one of the documents, but this is from the North Central Texas COG, which shows the roads that we had proposed and what that would do to the roads that were the high traffic roads. So one of the things that I guess I'll step back and say, one of the things that the Commissioners Court is responsible for, one of those things is roads and essential services. So that's part of our job, and we started a year and a half ago looking at where do we need to improve roads, because we know that 377 will eventually be under construction. But we also know that Fall Creek is a 2-lane road with lots of traffic on it, lots of construction continuing towards the De Cordova, Complantation, and past Complantation. Additional home developments are being created, and that 2-lane road has emergency vehicles on it on a regular basis. And if you've been on Fall Creek, when there's an ambulance or a fire truck behind you, you cannot get out of the way unless you just happen to be next to one of the very few shopping centers that are there. But that's only a small part in Acton. The rest of it is 2 lanes. So it's, we needed to find a way to relieve traffic on Fall Creek, relieve traffic on 377, and relieve traffic on 144. And that's what we got together. We had multiple workshops, and we came up with several project ideas. We sent those to North Central Texas COG. They did their traffic analysis, and they came back and said, wow, you guys really know your county, because what you said would happen to relieve traffic by these roads, our analysis shows that will relieve traffic on those roads. So if you'll click on the very first document, that's our latest presentation from our August 6th workshop that goes through what the road bond project is about. And if you'll just kind of go to the next slide. We did have lots of stakeholders across the county, different developments, Complantation, De Cordova, people from across the county that got together and came to the workshops. So if you keep going, it kind of gives the background, and I want you to go out there and look at it yourself and read through it. This is the background of what happened, how we got to where we are. There's a QR code that'll, again, QR codes seem to be popular tonight, but QR code to take you directly there. And so this is just the background, and eventually you'll get to this map, which is the map that I brought, but it's very hard to see. And so detail in here is each of the projects. So if you go to the next slide, okay, right there, the spreadsheet. Okay, this spreadsheet, and as I say, go and look at it yourself, because you can't see it from up here. You need to put it on your phone or call it up on your computer at home. But this goes through all of the projects and what the reason for it, and the total project cost, which is the all-in cost, which includes funding from available sources such as North Central Texas COG or other federal funding that we will partner with to fund the roads. So the county portion is what's on the bond is $125 million, and that leverages $689 million, which is the all-in cost of what all the projects would be at the end of construction. So we hired a company called ITS to help us go through this process, because none of the 5 of us are qualified to do this. We've never done this before. So this company, ITS, has partnered with Rockwall County, Denton County, and several other counties to do road bonds. And they're very successful at leveraging the county's portion and getting federal dollars or state dollars to do road construction. So take a look at all of these projects. I'm not going to go through each one of them, but I want to show you, if you go to the couple of pages down, each project is detailed out. So each road, what it is, why it's on there, and the cost. So be sure to look at that. And of course, if you have any questions, my door's always open. Most of you have my phone number. You know how to get a hold of me. Our phone numbers are on the website. I'm sure many of you already have our personal numbers and our work numbers and our email addresses. So thank you for the time, and that's it.
Each month, with as an aspect, we have a couple of door prizes prizes for you guys tonight. We're trying to wind down the summer a little bit. So, and while we do the door prizes, we also pass a basket. We do this each month. This helps the club with our paying speakers or any of the projects we do as far as charity work, our senior essay contest and those type of things. So whatever you can give, nothing's too small. Just please give us. Okay, so the first one.
It's just summer, outdoor, indoor, patio, with our pillows, kind of festive, end of summer kind of thing. And the number is, drum roll,
935.
He needs to go. We didn't feel like.
And the next one is kind of a cute little gadget. My husband has one, he uses it a lot, and what it is a light that you can wear. You have to keep your hands free so you can do projects. And then it's got 3 levels on it, low, medium, and high, so you can, go out in the dark, do some projects, whatever. But it's
Chickens. Look for chickens. Look for chickens and snakes. Look for
oh, it's a yeah.
Monica, look for chickens and snakes.
Okay, so it's 915.
So you had a 9?
915.
Yes, you were. Number 5.
Snake?
I love that. True.
Good job, Joey.
Thanks, Anna. Okay, so next, we do have a very special speaker with us tonight. He comes to us from Texans for Fiscal Responsibility. I think this is a good speaker to have with the conversations that are going on in our community at the moment. So please welcome Andrew McVeigh from Texans for Fiscal Responsibility.
All right. Can y'all hear me in the back? Everyone's good?
Good.
Folks in the hallway? Okay. Well, thank y'all so very much for having me here this evening. My name is Andrew McVeigh. I'm the president of Texans for Fiscal Responsibility, and it's an honor and a privilege to be here with y'all this evening. I think this is my first time here, so I'm really excited to get to talk to y'all about a whole bunch of stuff. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump right on in because I do have a lot of information to cover, and I want to be sure to save time for questions at the end. Okay? Okay, so I hope everyone can see the screen up there. I have a lot of slides this evening. The theme for this evening's talk is property taxes, fiscal irresponsibility, and the 89th legislature. Our agenda for this evening, or our table of contents, if you will, I'm going to introduce y'all to TFR. For those of you who don't know who we are, what is Texans for Fiscal Responsibility? I'm going to talk to y'all about the Fiscal Responsibility Index. That's one of our main projects that we do, so I'll talk to y'all about that. It covers some property tax basics, right? Should be a review for everybody here, but just so we're all on the same page. Then we're going to cover the state budget, how that works here in the state of Texas. We're going to cover some of the recent property tax relief efforts here in Texas over the last few years. And then we're going to do a roundup of this last regular session that ended back on June 1st, I believe. And then a very brief update on the current special session that is going on right now here in Austin. So with that, who are we, right? What is Texans for Fiscal Responsibility? Well, we are an independent educational nonprofit that is focused on providing you, the taxpayers, with the tools and the resources that you need so that you can yourselves advocate for pro-taxpayer and pro-family reforms. That's what we're all about, right? We believe in the interests of taxpayers and families, not the interests of lobbyists or bureaucrats in Austin, should rule the day here in Texas. I want to introduce y'all to a couple of our high-level staff members, if you will. Obviously, me there on the left, I'm the president and CEO of TFR. And I have with me this evening our executive director, Dustin Setsky. I'm going to let him come up just for a brief second and introduce himself.
Just be really grateful that I'm not giving the presentation because I'm in my third week on the job at TFR. I love Hood County. I've been here lots and lots. In 2020, I helped run a campaign in Hood County. Many of you supported a candidate named John Francis and got to know each other during that period of time. So you could say I'm a longtime listener, first-time caller. All right, if we're a Rush Limbaugh fan out there. I'll just say this. Raise your hand if you've become involved in Texas politics or local politics in the last 4 years. So recently. Put it up way up high. Awesome. That's good. That's a lot. That's a lot of new people. There's going to be some great information for you tonight. I'll just tell you this. Hood County punches way above its weight, okay, when it comes to Texas politics. Y'all have some excellent activists. You've got great people that you send to RPT convention and involved with everything that we do in Austin. So if you're one of those people that put your hand up, you've become involved recently. You've got big shoes to fill. You've got a legacy to protect. I love Hood County. I'm so grateful for Hood County. Thank y'all for having TFR out tonight, and look forward to visiting with y'all later.
So the two gentlemen on the right, Dr. Van Scan and Mr. Bill Peacock, these are two brilliant economists that we get the privilege to work with on a weekly and sometimes daily basis. Dr. Van Scan worked in President Trump's first administration in the Office of Budget and Management. He's a brilliant mind, and him along with Mr. Bill Peacock, they're in a lot of ways the brains behind a lot of the data and the numbers I'm going to be sharing with y'all this evening. And so, if you go to our website and read any of our articles, you'll see their names pop up fairly frequently. So that's our staff. What do we do, right? I said it in generic terms, but here's a few concrete things that we do. First, the Fiscal Responsibility Index. I mentioned this earlier. This is essentially a report card of how your legislators perform each regular session. We also publish news and commentary and research on our website, write educational materials that you can go and read and educate yourself on the issues, the legislation that's coming up in the legislature, what's going on with property taxes and so forth. And of course, we engage in voter education activities. We send mailers out, we send texts out, educating the voters, educating the taxpayers on what their elected officials are doing with their money, right? What they're voting on. And then lastly, we have our Texas Prosperity Plan, essentially our fancy name for those reforms, right? Those pro-taxpayer and pro-family reforms that we believe will help get Texas back on track so that Texas can continue to remain a beacon of light for prosperity and conservative values in the country and in the world. So moving on, I want to introduce y'all to the Fiscal Responsibility Index. This is probably the #1 thing that we're known for if you have heard of us. Like I said, it's basically a report card of how your elected state representatives and elected state senators perform each regular legislative session. So every 2 years, we're by and large the #1 conservative scorecard in the state of Texas. We go all the way back to 2007, and the way it works is we will watch the legislative session as it progresses, right? And if there's a bill or amendment that's coming to the floor of either chamber that we believe is important for taxpayers, right? It's either really good for taxpayers, it's really bad for taxpayers, we will send out vote notices, something that looks something like that. And we will send those vote notices to the legislators, to their staff, and to the public, and let them know, hey, this is something that we're watching, and sharing with them our reasons for why this is either good or bad for taxpayers, and encouraging them to vote in the pro-taxpayer way, and of course letting them know that this is something that's eligible to be on our index after session. And so we're very upfront about those things that we're watching, right? We're very upfront about those things that we might score them on at the end of session. Like I said, we go all the way back to 2007, and we have all of this data over the last nearly 20 years on our website so you can see the trends of your elected officials down in Austin. Brief recap, I'm sure you all know this, but in the Senate we have 31 senators, 20 of which are Republicans, and the Senate is led by Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. And in the House, we have 150 House members, 88 of which are Republicans, and the House is currently led by Speaker Justin Burns. We published the index in mid-July, if I'm remembering correctly. It's been a bit of a whirlwind. And we grade on a 0 to 100 scale, right? So 0%, you didn't vote right once. 100%, you voted right every single time. And used the A through F rating as well. And so those who got a 90% or higher we give the title of taxpayer champion. Right? Those were representatives or senators who consistently supported taxpayers in Austin. So let's look at some of this session's numbers. And I apologize, it's probably hard to see some of these numbers up here. But these are the average scores for 2025. So on the far left there, that's the Senate average for 2025, 67%. Right? Almost a C. They almost made it. 67%. The House average is a 58, so a lot worse. And then the overall average between all the House members and all the senators is a 59. If you want to break it down by party, there on the right-hand side, the right graph, the Republican Party, or Republican senators in the Senate scored an average of an 84, Democrats an average of a 38, and in the House, fairly similar, an average Republican score of 76 and an average Democrat score of a 31. What about the historic trends? Well, like I said, all the way back to 2007, the blue line there is the Texas House, and the green line there is the Texas Senate. And you can see back in 07, 09, 11, the House tended to be a little bit more conservative than the Senate. And then things flipped. And around 2013, the Senate became more conservative, more fiscally responsible, and it's stayed that way ever since. Both chambers peaked right around 2015, 2017, as you can see, when they dipped again, 2021, 2023, and in this session, they both increased fairly substantially, getting back to their 2015, 2017 peaks. Well, why is that? Why was there such an increase this session? Well, two of the main reasons that we at TFR have identified for this increase in the average scores is because we have a very large freshman class coming to the Texas House this session, you're all probably aware of. And those freshman representatives, by and large, many of them, stayed true to their core principles, the conservative principles. They stuck to their guns, and they did very well. Right? And so not only did they score well themselves and they take the right votes fairly consistently, they also helped shift the Overton window, if you will. They helped push the other Republican colleagues in the House and the Senate more to the right, getting them to, bolstering their courage, if you will, to vote more conservative, to be more fiscally responsible during the session. And this session, we had 3 senators in the Senate who were taxpayer champions. So these are senators that scored a 90 or above. That was Senator Brandon Creighton, Senator Brian Hughes, Senator Mace Middleton. And then in the House, we had 20 Republicans, or they were all Republicans, but 20 House members scored 90% or above. So 20 taxpayer champions in the Texas House. Some of the top ones, you might recognize the names of Representative Andy Hopper, Representative Mike Alcott, Representative David Lowe, Representative Brent Money, and more. And this, again, is one of the largest numbers of taxpayer champions that we've ever had. And again, it's because many of those freshmen went to Austin and actually did what they said they were going to do for the most part and helped get a lot of the others along with them. Y'all's local representatives, just wanted to share this with y'all for what it's worth. Senator Brian Birdwell, SD22, scored an 81% on the index. And then Representative Shelby Slauson, just shy of an A with an 89%. I believe Representative David Cook is running to replace Senator Birdwell. If I remember correctly, he scored an 86% in the top 30 of the 150 members in the House. So not too bad, but not quite at the A level. All of this information, all of the data going back to 2007, all of the historic trends, all of the averages, all of this information is on our website, texastaxpayers.com. You can go see everyone's scores, the scores of your representative, the scores of your family down in South Texas or East Texas or wherever. You can see all of those scores on our website, and you can see all of the votes that we scored, right? And you can see the reasons that we said that this was either pro-taxpayer or anti-taxpayer. So all of that is on our website, texastaxpayers.com/index. Scan the QR code, lots of QR codes this evening, apparently. And anyways, check it out. This is a great resource for you, not only before you go to the ballot box, obviously, but also so that you can more effectively engage with your elected officials before, during, or after a legislative session, right? So that you know where they stand on the issues, you can encourage them when they do well, and you can encourage them to do better when they do not so well. So I encourage y'all to check this out at texastaxpayers.com. Okay, so let's have a brief review, if you will, of property taxes in Texas. Like I said, this should be I'm sure everyone here knows almost all of this information, but just so it's kind of at the forefront of our minds, right, we're all kind of on the same page. Let's talk about how property taxes work. Property taxes go back to before Texas was ever an independent republic. In fact, the Mexican government removing a property tax exemption was one of the many causes that spurred on the Texas War for Independence. And so not only are property taxes just as old as Texas, but our disdain for property taxes as Texans is just as old. Many folks don't know this, but into the 20th century, the state had a statewide property tax. And depending on the year, depending on the season, it supplied anywhere from half to 3/4 of the entire state's budget. That statewide property tax was eventually phased out and was constitutionally abolished in 1982. And the local property tax system is what we're left with, right? We have only local property taxes, and that system was revamped in 1979. And that's largely the framework, the system that we have to this day, with obviously some tweaks and some changes here and there. But the main revamp of the local property tax system was in 79. So how does it work, right? How do you get that dollar amount that you owe to your local taxing entities every year that you have to write the check out to? Well, to boil it down to its simplest form, if you will, it's a math equation that looks something like this. You take the appraised value of your property, subtract the exemptions like the homestead exemption, divide that number by 100, and then multiply that number by the property tax rate. Right? So you're dealing with two halves of this equation, two main parts. You got the appraised value of the property, and you got the tax rate, right? You know what I'm tracking? Property tax rates come in two forms. We have maintenance and operations, or M&O property taxes. That covers the day-to-day operations of each taxing entity, right? It's going to pay for the salaries, it's going to pay to keep the lights on, that kind of thing. And then we have interest and sinking, or INS property taxes, which goes to pay for the bond debt, right? Those bonds that y'all approve in bond elections. The homestead exemption is one of the main, I'm sure y'all have heard of this, y'all know what this is, but this is one of the main forms that the legislature in recent years has used to provide some, or attempted to provide some property tax relief in recent years, right? And so how does it work, right? Let's say you have a $300,000 home. The property tax, or the homestead exemption currently, it's about to change, if it's approved, is $100,000. And so you would subtract $100,000 from $300,000, and so you only pay school property taxes on that home as if it was worth $200,000. Right? Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. There is one problem with the homestead exemption that many folks overlook, in that the homestead exemption is tied to a static dollar amount that doesn't change. And so while it may provide some relief initially, especially when you first get it onto your property, the value of that relief is going to decrease over time as your appraisal continues to go. Right? So that's one of the concerns with the homestead exemption as the form of providing relief. Right? Another common way in which they attempt to provide relief down in Austin is through rate compression, or buying down the tax rate. So now we're dealing with the second half of that equation I showed y'all earlier. So let's take an example, right? Let's take that $300,000 home. Let's say your school district has a tax rate of $1, right? $300,000 home divided by 100, multiplied by $1 tax rate, paying $3,000 in school property taxes. But if the state comes in with, say, 20 cents of compression, now the equation looks like this. $300,000 home divided by 100, multiplied by an 80-cent tax rate, means you only pay $2,400 in school and property taxes, equaling roughly a 20% reduction in this specific example. There are three benefits of compression that in some ways give credence to it being more effective than the homestead exemption in certain cases. Number one, compression correlates with a percentage of your property tax bill, right? Rather than that static dollar amount that doesn't change. Secondly, compression gives relief to the entire economy. As the homestead exemption name implies, small businesses see no relief, right? Farmers, ranchers, renters see no relief from the homestead exemption. But compression applies to all property taxes across the board. And lastly, compression is really the only realistic way that we can get to a point of eliminating school property taxes entirely in the future. And I'll talk more about how that might work a little bit later. So those are the two of the main forms of relief, or forms of relief that they have attempted to provide over the last several years. Before I go on, I'd like to start this new section by asking everyone a question. Raise your hand if you think the government, generally speaking, is already too big. It's already bigger than it should be. Okay, I'm seeing mostly everybody's hands are up. I'm seeing a couple double hands. All right. A follow-up question. How do you measure that? Well, you can kind of do it by looking at how many laws and rules and regulations they're passing, but sometimes those laws are good laws, right? I expect most of us here would agree that a law banning explicit material in an elementary school library is probably good, right? Shouldn't have to have it. Common sense would say you don't need it, but unfortunately in today's day and age you probably do need it, right? But what's an objective way that you can measure the size, scope, and growth of government? It's by how much of your money they're spending. That's an objective way to measure it. And so I hope you keep those couple things in mind as we go through these next several slides. Government's already bigger than it should be. Most of us agree on that, I think. And the way that you can objectively measure that is by how much of your money that they're spending. And I hate to break it to you, but government, generally speaking, across the board, from the federal level, we already know that. Thank God Trump's up there trying to do something about it. But at the state and local level as well, generally speaking, it's gotten far too big, far too intrusive in everyone's lives. And the root cause, as I think you're going to see in just a moment, is spending. Government spending is what drives the size and scope of government. Okay, so let's talk about a few things having to do with the 89th legislative session and a few things that led up to it. Starting with the state budget. Right? This graph, and again, I apologize for folks who can't read the numbers up there, but this graph shows the growth of the state budget from 1990 to the current biennium of 24 and 25, so the budget that was passed in 2023. So in 1990 to 91, the total state budget, total state appropriations, including federal money, was just $46.5 billion. Fast forward to the budget they passed in 2023, it's over $321 billion. This is a massive, unsustainable increase in state spending. And the star over here on the left-hand side, that's when Republicans, right, men and women who claim to be conservatives and want limited government and less taxes, that's when they took control of both chambers of the legislature, and yet government spending has continued to increase under their watch. The size and scope of government has continued to increase under their watch. Another way of looking at it, this graph, these two lines, the blue line on the top is actual state appropriations. So it's actually what they passed into law to spend. And you'll see, for example, in 04 to 05, it was $116 billion. This new money that we're about to go into, so the budget they just passed, over $337 billion. The red line below that is what they would be appropriating if they were following population plus inflation, which is the standard metric across the board to determine what? To determine the taxpayer's ability to pay, to determine the taxpayer's ability to keep up, right? And so this current biennium that we're about to go into, we're spending $337 billion. If they were only keeping up with population plus inflation, the budget would be $274 billion. So we're far outpacing we already agree the government was bigger than it should have been, but they're still even outpacing our population growth and our inflation growth. So now let's drill in a little bit and look at just state funds only, right? Just state money. So this is excluding money that the federal government, Washington, D.C. is into this because we have a little less control over that. In 2021, the state funds of the budget was just $166 billion. In 2023, it increased to $219 billion. That was a 32% increase in state spending. That's the largest spending increase in the history of the state of Texas. And then this session, it increased it from $219 to $237 billion for a total increase in just 2 sessions of 43%. That's $48 billion in new spending, excluding the money that they're sending back for property tax. Once again, massive, unsustainable increases in the size and scope of government with your money. So what do we do about it? Well, TFR for the last several years has been advocating for something called the no-growth budget, right? Government's already bigger than it should be, so what do? We need to freeze it where it's at. Let's stop these massive increases, and let's start identifying the wasteful, the woke, the inappropriate spending in the state budget and start cutting it out. And either redirect it to something that's better for taxpayers, better for families, or send it back to the taxpayers in the form of property tax relief. And this isn't just our idea. This is in the Republican Party of Texas platform, plan number 62, right there at the bottom. We call on the Texas legislature to freeze state spending. Unfortunately, this session they did not heed that call. Local governments are a big part of this problem as well. Local governments now have $330 billion in local debt. Over $150 billion in interest on that debt. That's $480 billion in local debt in the state of Texas. Right? And obviously there are some local jurisdictions that are doing much better than others, but this is total across the state. We have the third highest local debt in the entire country. We're only being beat out by California and New York. Not a good record to have, not a good bronze medal for Texas to have.
I messed you up, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. I thought it was my fat thumbs. Okay. That $480 billion, that amounts to about $16,000 owed on average, right, by every person in this room. I don't know about you, but I don't have $16,000 just laying around to pay off these debts. If you do have $16,000 just laying around, I want you to meet with my buddy Dustin in the back and talk to him about a very generous gift to TFR after the meeting. Okay? So again, local government spending, local government debt is going to be one of the biggest obstacles to actually securing real lasting property tax relief in Texas. You can see here in this chart at the bottom, the average annual property tax revenue increases in just the last few years from cities, counties, and special districts. So what's going on with property tax relief? This is obviously at least one of the number one issues facing voters, facing taxpayers in Texas. And we hear about it a lot. Y'all probably remember in 2023, the legislature passed something that they called was the largest property tax relief package in the history of the state. That was back in 2023. It was about $12.7 billion in new relief, which is a lot of money. I don't have $12.7 billion. But what was the result of it, right? What was the result of $12.7 billion in new relief? Well, as you can see there on the right, in red, school property taxes did go down by about 10%. But special district cities and counties all rapidly increased their property taxes at the same time, offsetting the relief that the legislature provided. Right? And so, for the largest property tax relief package in the history of the state, in 2023, property taxes still increased $650 million. Not a very good return on investment. Right? I think these two graphs will kind of bring it home for y'all here. And again, I apologize for those who can't see. The graph on the right shows the total increases in property tax levies over the last 2.5 decades. So in 1998, and mostly everyone here remembers 1998, total property taxes collected in the state of Texas by every city, every county, every school, every special district was just $19 billion. 2.5 decades later, it's over $81 billion. Actually, 2023 it was $81 billion. 2024, I believe it's up to 86. Projected to be at 88, 89 this year. So again, massive increases in the taxation of the people. What is that for? Is to spend, is to feed this spending frenzy by local governments. And again, not every local government is doing this, but this is across the board in the state of Texas. Now, many folks will stop me here and say, hold on, Andrew, the reason why our property taxes are going up is because we have a growing state. Thousands of people are moving here every day, at least every week. And inflation is something we have to contend with every day, every week, every year, every month, especially over the last few years with the record inflation we've had. That's why our property taxes are increasing. But if you look at the numbers, if you look at the data, property taxes are far outpacing, again, population and inflation growth over the same period. The graph on the left, that bar on the right side, that's population plus inflation growth over this period, 136%. Property tax growth over the same period, 330%. So again, if that red bar in the middle said roughly 136% increase, I probably wouldn't be up here, I probably wouldn't be standing up. Because that would just simply mean that property taxes are growing at the same rate as the growth of the state economy. But they're far outpacing that. Far outpacing that. So what did they do this session? Well, not too terribly much, unfortunately. There were 3 main bills they passed during the regular session a few months ago. HB 9, SB 4, and SB 23. All three of these are going to be on your ballot in November as proposed constitutional amendments that you have to approve as the voters. HB 9 provides property tax exemption for small businesses. SB 4 raises the standard property tax homestead exemption to $140K, and then SB 23 raises the homestead exemption for seniors from 10 to 60, 60 plus 140, so it would be $200,000 for seniors. And again, this all has to be approved by the voters in November. So how much did this all cost? Well, when you add it all up, roughly $6.75 billion. The thing is, though, don't remember hearing about a $24 billion surplus? Anybody here? We had a $33 billion surplus in 2023. This session we had a $24 billion surplus. So out of $24 billion, they're giving us less than $7 billion back in property tax relief. It is ridiculous. I like to think about it like this. Let's say you and your wife go out to a really fancy restaurant, steakhouse, whatever. And you go and they bring you your check and you pay the bill, not looking at it, and you're getting up, you're about to leave, you look at the receipt again, you realize, wait a minute, they overcharged me $24 for food I didn't buy, for food I didn't eat. And you go up to the waiter and you say, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I paid you for what I owed you, but you also overcharged me by $24. Can I get a refund? And they look at you and they say, best we can do is $6.75.
Oh, gosh.
Right? That's what's going on here. That's unfortunately what's going on here. They overtaxed us by $24 billion, and they only gave us a quarter of it back. Property tax projections for this year, roughly a $2 billion increase despite the relief that was provided. And again, why is this? It's because local governments are far outpacing the relief that the legislature is providing in Austin. That's what's going on. So Texas boasts the 6th highest property tax burden in the entire country. Now again, oftentimes folks will stop me and say, hold on, Andrew. The reason why our property tax burden is so high must be because we don't have an income tax. And they're right. We don't have an income tax, thank God. But when you actually look at it, it's not a revenue problem, it's a spending problem. There are other states that are growing just as fast as us that also do not have an income tax, but their property tax burden is much lower. 2 states, Florida and Tennessee, for example, are growing just as fast as Texas, and they have no income tax. And their property tax burdens are ranked 26th and 37th, respectively. So we're 6th, Florida's 26th, Tennessee's 37th. This is per capita, right? So it evens out. And so again, it's not a revenue problem, it's a spending problem. What is Tennessee and Florida doing differently? They're respecting the taxpayers. They're being responsible with their people's money. That's what they're doing. That's what they're doing that we're not, unfortunately. And ultimately what it comes down to is property taxes are a form of rent to the government. That's what it is. And if you don't agree with that, fair enough. But I would ask you to consider, perhaps, if you stop paying your property taxes, it's probably not going to end up so well for you. Right? So that's what they are ultimately. So what are our recommendations, right? What are those reforms that we believe will actually do something, right? Because that's what everyone wants to know. What's going to actually fix this? Well, there's multiple pieces to this puzzle, right? This is a very complicated system, as y'all know, right? But here's a few things that we believe are crucial to actually getting this thing under control. First of all, we need to impose spending increase caps on all local taxing entities using that population plus inflation metric. Right? Local governments, again, are part of the problem, generally speaking, and they're far outpacing even population and inflation growth. And so we need to say, look, you can keep increasing your spending, but it at least needs to be constrained by population and inflation growth, not far outpacing it by double digits. Okay? Secondly, we should make the no new revenue rate an actual no new revenue rate. Someone was talking about that earlier, and unfortunately, the no new revenue rate is a great place to start. But unfortunately, there are loopholes in the no new revenue rate. It's not a real no new revenue rate. I have seen local governments who have adopted the no new revenue rate and it's still brought in new revenue. And you're thinking, what's going on? Where did this money come from? There are loopholes in it, right? It doesn't include new property. It doesn't include certain healthcare expenditures. It doesn't include certain criminal justice expenditures, and so forth. Okay, and so there are loopholes in it, and at the very least, for transparency's sake, we should make the no new revenue rate an actual no new revenue rate. If you adopt this rate, factoring appraisals, you're going to get the exact same amount of money that you got last year. Right? So we need that transparency. We should require voter approval for any property tax increase. If they're going to increase your taxes by $1, you should have a say. Right? Lastly, we should freeze school district M&O property taxes until they're compressed to zero, and that would eliminate half of everyone's property tax bill. Right? This still fully funds schools. Right? Schools don't lose any money. We're simply shifting it. We're saying this doesn't need to be paid by the property taxpayer anymore. And again, 50 to 60% of your property tax bill would go away. Okay, a lot of that was doom and gloom. I admit, some not so good stuff. What were some wins, right? Because it wasn't all doom and gloom during the session. We actually had some very good, strong wins during this session. I want to highlight just a few of them for y'all. HCR 18. This is going to be on your ballot in November. A ban on capital gains tax. Right? Same thing we did with the income tax. We're saying no capital gains tax in the future. SB 12 strengthens parental rights in education. SB 17, a huge win. This was one of TFR's priorities going into this last legislative session. If you got my card or the handout that I gave y'all, I included one of these on our priorities, and so we need to update it because they fixed it this session. SB 17 bans hostile foreign entities or individuals from buying up our land and our resources, our houses, and our factories, right? Folks from China, folks from Russia. I believe a lady earlier mentioned that there were thousands of acres in Texas that are owned by China, right? We're putting a stop to that. So they did a lot of not so good stuff this session, but this is one of the best things that they did, for sure. So any of your representatives or folks that you know who voted for this down in Austin, give them a pat on the back for supporting this legislation. SB 17. SB 33 and HB 3053, curbing wasteful spending. So we're banning taxpayer funds for abortion travel. We're banning taxpayer funds for gun buyback programs. HB 21, Housing Finance Corporation reform. Most folks haven't heard of this, but there was this scheme going around where these companies were building housing projects, and they were getting basically 99-year property tax elimination for 99 years. And they were going outside their jurisdictions. They were doing all kinds of shady stuff. This bill brings it all in, imposes audits and transparency and all kinds of things. Make sure they can't go outside the jurisdiction, and really brings in these projects and make sure that they're not abused going forward. HB 1056, digital gold-backed currency is coming to Texas. And as far as I know, I think we're the first state to do this. If I'm wrong, anyone knows, let me know. I'd love to learn about the other states' project. Digital gold-backed currency is coming to Texas. SB 8, immigration enforcement, making sure our sheriffs cooperate with President Trump on our immigration enforcement efforts. SB 379, making sure that the SNAP benefits actually go to essential nutrition, not junk food and sugary drinks and snacks and things like that, right? If we're going to have a safety net, like a social safety net like this, we can debate on whether or not we should. But if we're going to have one, it should actually fund real food, not snacks, not junk food, and things like that. HCR2, another issue that's going to be on your ballot, bans death taxes in Texas, and SB 40, no taxpayer money for ban. So those are some wins that came out of this last legislative session. What about some setbacks? Well, I already mentioned a couple of them. SB 1, the General Appropriations Act, billions of dollars in new wasteful spending. Unfortunately, HB 500, their supplemental appropriations bill, more billions of dollars in wasteful spending, and is one of the ways that they get around their spending limits, by the way, is by having a supplemental appropriations bill. SB 22, we're giving $1.5 billion of your hard-earned money to Hollywood to come here and make movies. So congratulations, you're not giving your money to Hollywood billionaires. So I apologize, but that did pass. SB 19, ban on taxpayer-funded lobbying, failed to pass during the regular session. SB 1798, banning in-state tuition for illegals. We did actually stop the main part of this a few days after session ended, when the U.S. Department of Justice brought a challenge against it, and Attorney General Paxton basically came to an agreement with the DOJ to end this part. But unfortunately, it still technically is on the books, right? So if you get a new DOJ and they say you have to enforce it, point is, they didn't actually repeal in-state tuition for illegals. It's still technically on the books. There's other subsidies they can still get. SB 646, this is a Biden-style student loan forgiveness program that your conservative Republican legislature passed into law, where we're going to use taxpayer money to forgive the student loans of mental health care workers. And SB 293, the last vote that either the House or the Senate took this session was to increase their own pensions in your schools. SB 293. And not only did they increase their own pensions, they also changed how the pensions will be increased in the future, and they gave that authority to an unelected agency, an unelected bureaucracy, the Texas Ethics Commission, and they now get to, in a backroom, unilaterally raise legislators' pensions going forward. So that was usually the last vote that they took before they signed that during the regular session. So those were some setbacks, some pretty big ones. What about some mixed bags? Well, SB 423 and 9, property tax bills. Again, anything that they can provide is great, but is better than nothing. But none of these bills were great. None of these bills are actually going to provide real relief for the taxpayer. SB 3070 dealt with the Texas Lottery Commission. Y'all probably heard about all the scandal going on with the Texas Lottery Commission, right? How they were accused of trafficking children, and how they worked with some Chinese company to win the lottery and all this stuff. A whole lot of bad deal. But anyways, SB 3070 abolished the Texas Lottery Commission, so that's one state agency that's gone. But we still have the lottery, and it's moved to another agency, and we're going to put it under review for the next 4 years to see if we actually keep it, and then they can decide in 2029 whether or not to abolish it completely or keep it going. So, last thing before I wrap up, I think I'm doing okay on time, and then we'll take some questions. Just a very brief update on what's going on right now here in Austin as we sit here. So 3 main things that we're focusing on at TFR during the special session. 3 things that were on the governor's call for the special session. First of all, reducing the property tax burden. He actually said, I want to reduce the property tax burden. Right? So good for him. We're totally supportive of Governor Abbott on that. The only main piece of legislation that has made its way through the legislature at this point is SB 10. SB 10 lowers the voter approval tax rate from 3.5% to 2.5% for large cities and counties. I don't think it's going to do anything for you, because y'all are big. That would be my guess. So that's by Senator Betancourt, imposing spending caps on all local tax agencies. That was on Governor Abbott's call. And if you remember earlier on our recommendations on those reforms, that was the top thing that we said. Right? And last Friday, I testified on 2 bills in the House that would do just that, HB 73 and HB 46. So we're going to see if those make any progress during the special. And then SB 13, HB 186 by Representative Alcott deal with taxpayer-funded lobbying. How many of y'all have heard of taxpayer-funded lobbying? Okay, a whole bunch of you. This is an unethical practice, and it's a vicious cycle in which local governments take their money through taxes. They use it to hire professional lobbyists. They send those lobbyists to Austin to lobby against your interests, to lobby for higher taxes, to lobby for more government, to lobby against pro-taxpayer reforms. And then the cycle continues. They go back to the local governments take more of the money, they hire those lobbyists again, they send them down to Austin, and the cycle continues. We are spending hundreds of millions of dollars, local governments are spending hundreds of millions of dollars on taxpayer-funded lobbying. That's money that could go to fixing roads, potholes, it could go to improving public safety, it could go to property tax relief, and yet they're using it to hire professional lobbyists to go down there and advocate against your interests. Right? And so I mentioned it earlier, SB 19 did not pass during the regular session. This special session is on the call. Thank you, Governor Abbott. Senate Bill 13 by Senator Middleton has already passed out of the Senate. It's been referred to the House State Affairs Committee. We're waiting a hearing. And Representative Mike Alcott, which y'all I believe have heard of, HB 186. That's his identical bill, but the House version to eliminate taxpayer-funded lobbying, now has 70 co-authors. So we're just 6 shy of what we would need to actually pass it on the floor of the House. But again, the bottleneck is going to be with the State Affairs Committee. So if this isn't something that you're passionate about, give your representative a call, give your senator a call the State Affairs Committee in the House, and tell them you want to hear him on taxpayer-funded lobbying week 7 before the session is over. With that, I just want to say thank y'all very much for having me. I mentioned at the very beginning, we are a nonprofit. And we are able to do everything we do, this presentation, everything else, through generous supporters like y'all all across the state. So if you got something out of this, you believe in what we're doing, we'd really appreciate it if you would consider giving us a generous donation. We have QR code up there. But otherwise, happy to take questions. Thank y'all again for having with me and Dustin here with y'all this evening. And I hope you enjoyed this evening's presentation. Thank y'all very much.
You confused me when you said that we put through a decrease in our property tax, and then it sounded like some other denizen entity out there came back and snuck and raised them right back up again. I didn't quite understand that.
Okay, I think what you're referencing is in 2023, I showed y'all how the legislature provided $12.7 billion in property tax relief. And whenever the legislature provides relief, it's always having to do with the schools, right? They don't ever provide relief on the city side or the county side or something like that. And so school property taxes, because of that, went down by about 10%. But the same year, right, cities and counties and special districts across the state of Texas increased property taxes enough to offset the relief that was provided. And so property taxes across the board, across the state, actually went up. The total levies went up. Now, some people did see their property tax bills go down, but overall property taxes across the state still went up. I've talked to folks who said in 23 their property tax bills went up $1,000. Yeah. So, generally speaking, across the board, property taxes have not decreased since 2011, if I remember correctly. So every single year, and that was only 1%. They went down about 1% across the board. They've increased every single year since. Yes, sir.
Yes. Could you help explain further, layman terms, on no new revenue tax? So at the school board meeting last night,
yes,
the school board will always come out and say, you lowered your tax rate. What I'm understanding with no new revenue tax would say that if your house is valued at $100,000 and next year it's valued at $150,000, that the school is still getting the extra $50,000, let's say. So, in essence, they're getting a boost. So then they raise the budget another 10% this year, and so 8%. So they raise the budget, which means it's going to cost us more money. But they lowered the tax rate. We're paying more money for taxes, and it's like looking at like blocks of wood that are going, no, we lowered your tax rate. We're all that to make it cookies. And it's getting a little bit old because I know and I understand that they're still getting more money in. And the point being with no new revenue tax rate should be that if they're getting in, you know, I mean, the budget down here is only at 93 million or whatever, almost 100 million to be honest, but I mean 98. So thank you. And so it's just gone up incredible the last 4 years, over 6% per year, and it went up 10. They're spending more money, and they're taking all the new houses that move in, the new peoples that move. They're still taking all that money. We could be getting a lower tax rate. Am I wrong in saying that?
No, I think you're onto something. So oftentimes what happens, and it sounds like maybe it's happening here, but you know, every jurisdiction is different. Okay? But oftentimes what I've seen is local elected officials, when they adopt their tax rates, they will go out to the people and say, hey, we lowered your tax rate, or we lowered it down to the no new revenue rate. But that doesn't mean that they actually lowered your taxes, the money that you have to pay, right? Because again, going back to the very beginning of my presentation, it's an equation, right? So you have the appraisal side, and you have the rate side. And there's all kinds of, and then you've got M&O, and you've got INS. So if you're passing a bunch of bonds, property tax is going to go up. If your appraisal goes up, and then the rate didn't go down enough to account for that, your property taxes are going to go up. So oftentimes, they do lower the rate, And it's true your property taxes didn't go up as much as they would have if they kept it at the rate they did before. But oftentimes the dollar amount that you have to write the check out for still goes up. And so that's oftentimes what happens around the state.
So I have a question. So I did hear that on the 2.5% cap that there was an amendment to remove the $75,000 population. Have you heard that?
Yes, that was added. There's a little bit of confusion though, because there was another amendment that was added that included that language, and they attempted to rectify that, and the vote failed.
Oh.
So here, I'm going to make a bold prediction for you. The bill's going to go to a conference committee with the Senate, and that's where a few members of the House and a few members of the Senate get together in the back room, and they come up with basically a compromise version. The bold prediction is this. It's going to be exactly the same as it was when it came out of the Senate.
Okay. And then why is that only for cities and counties? Why doesn't it include special districts like hospital districts and ESDs and water districts and all those things?
All taxing entities, which is exactly what Governor had called for. He said all taxing entities. Because they're all involved, right? Why? I couldn't say for sure. That's the bill that the Senate came up with and sent over to the House. I believe there was an amendment on the House floor, if I remember correctly, that it did attempt to include all taxing entities, and I don't think it got on. If it did, bold prediction, it's not going to be on there when the conference committee comes out. So I do think, again, prediction, SB 10 will pass, and I think, again, it will be 2.5% for larger cities and counties, 75,000 and over, and that's going to be the end of it. That's my prediction, but I would be more than happy to be proven wrong. So, other questions?
Yeah,
I can see your own.
yeah, I got a question right here.
Yes, sir.
So about 2 years ago, the geniuses down there came up with the compression, and they came up with golden pennies and you know rainbow pennies and all this kind of stuff.
Don't forget the copper. Copper penny.
And the copper and the way I remember, I've studied that pretty vehemently, and the way I understood it was in 7 years, the M&O would be bought completely down for school districts by the state. And that's gone down into the memory hole now. I mean, nothing's been bought down that I can tell. So what's going on with that?
So I'm not an expert on the whole copper pennies and rainbow pennies, as you say. But I'll tell you this. So they started their compression efforts back in 2019. And what has happened is they have continued to compress school property tax rates more and more every year. Schools continue to increase their spending and their taxes, and so the state is having to keep up with that. Part of you may hear from some elected officials that they're spending $51 billion on property tax. The reason why they're making that claim is because the cost of keeping up with the property tax relief that they've already provided has increased over the last 6 years because of appraisals increasing and inflation. And so the state actually does now provide, I think, about 40-45% of schools funding. So a lot of the schools funding that would have come from property taxes has now gone to the state, which of course is funded by sales taxes and gas sales taxes and all those things. We do believe that in less than 10 years, if they actually froze school and minimum property taxes and put the surplus towards compression, that you could actually eliminate school and minimum property taxes. The thing is, they haven't frozen the minimum rates, and they're not putting enough of the money in. That's what's happening.
I'll add something. When Don Huffines ran for governor,
When Don Huffines ran for governor, he had a property tax plan. And Bill Peacock, who is a part of Texas for Fiscal Responsibility, helped come up with craft that plan. His plans, depending on where you touch the little levers and stuff, was going to phase it out between 8 and 12 years. But Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, if they had started that effort similar to Huffines' plan to just compress until it's gone in 2019, when they started this great beachfront against property taxes, right? That it would have been done in significantly less time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So remember, we had a $33 billion surplus back in 2023, right? Schools across the state only collect about $40 billion in property taxes every year, right? And now remember, with the surplus, many folks think it's a one and done spend. That's not how our budget works. So we had a $24 billion surplus this session. That $24 billion is on top of the $33 billion that we had in 2023. That $33 billion we still have for this budget, right? And so a lot of folks say, well, if you spend that surplus on property tax relief, that's great for 2 years, but then it's gone. And that's not how our budget works. So if they'd actually put $33 billion towards property tax relief and $24 billion towards property tax relief, we would be very close to eliminating, if not have already eliminated, school property taxes. Other questions?
Yeah, I wanted to follow up with
Yes, sir.
what Jim Brown said and Commissioner Eagle said, and this is for the voters inside this room. Thank you for complimenting Hood County. We defeated a $300 million bond, a $154 million bond, and a $150-something million bond in 3 years. You got to keep voting, because what we found out last night, in the last 8 years, the student population has grown 13%. Correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. But the budget has grown 56%. So it's right into what you're saying. The student population, 13% growth. The budget has grown 56% in GISD. We got to put a stop to it. You got to vote for conservatives. The question that you probably don't have an answer to, how do we vote good conservatives in? And they go down to Austin and turn into sheep. It goes in Washington, D.C., and it happens in Austin. Mike Alcott's is a warrior, and we love him. I wish he was ours. But why do they flip?
That's the question of the millennium, right? Isn't it? I mean, there's a variety of factors that you could point to. Social pressure from other members.
Seat at the table.
You know, wanting a seat at the table, right? Or believing that you would get a seat at the table. Lobbyist pressure. Taxpayer-funded lobbyists. There's all kinds of, fundraising for your campaign. There's all kinds of different reasons that might happen. I think one of the bright spots from this session is that we saw, for the first time since probably the Tea Party movement, that when the voters are really focused, and I mean really focused, on who they're electing and holding them accountable, as we have been the last 2 years, those representatives, when they go down there, many of them stuck to their guns. That's why we had 20 taxpayer champions in the House this session, right? It's because y'all held them accountable, right? It's because y'all, and by y'all I mean people across the state as well, elected the right people to go down there. Now, will some of those people flip maybe? Possibly, anything's possible. But you gotta pray for them, first of all, right? And then you gotta hold them accountable by educating yourself, right? By using the index, by paying attention to how they're voting, by engaging with them on a weekly or monthly basis, consistently. But why that happens, it's different for every person, that's for sure. Austin has a terrible culture in the building, so that's part of it. And that's why I also say you've got to pray for them consistently, that they would make wise decisions.
Andrew, we have the taxpayer-funded lobby ban, which is Mike's working really, really hard to try to get to 76 co-authors on that bill, okay, to demand it be brought to the floor because the votes are there, right? That may happen. You should call Mike and thank him, number one. It's down in Austin. He's worked in the Capitol. I've been in the Capitol. They get a lot of, we need you to do this, and they don't get a lot of, Mike, thank you so much for spearheading this and doing this, right? So do that. Call Ken King, call the chair of state affairs, call Brian Birdwell, call Shelby Slauson, tell them to do everything they can to get that done. But special session's going to end here in 15-ish days or something like that. What kinds of things can these folks be doing in the interim through the primary season, and then maybe more importantly, perhaps, what can they be doing as we go to RPT convention? This is a really involved group. I see a lot of delegates. audience. I've seen people in this room in San Antonio and Houston. What can they be doing as we approach convention, maybe with priorities, resolutions, things like that?
Yeah, I'm going to say there's three pieces to that. One, you need to educate yourself. I've talked about that. You're all doing the right thing by being here and listening to great speakers and your local elected officials and your party officials who are all doing a fantastic job here, obviously. So educate yourselves on the issues, but don't just stop there. Get into the details, right? Get into the details of why they keep claiming property tax relief every session. Your bill still keeps going up, right? Well, why does that happen, right? Well, this kind of stuff, you gotta know your stuff. Secondly, you gotta stay engaged. You gotta get involved in your local county party, which we all are doing, right? You know, get on resolutions committee, right? Go to convention, right? Make sure that the party is actually putting the right priorities onto the RPT priority list, right? Thankfully, this session we had taxpayer-funded lobbying on the priority list. Fortunately, it still didn't get done because it is the thing that the entrenched rhinos, politicians, whatever you want to call them, do not want to give up, right? And so, stay involved, educate yourself, and grow.
So Andrew, that being said, how many people in here went to the San Antonio convention? Look at this club. This is the club, y'all.
Let's get more of y'all down there. Let's make sure, again, that you also hold your elected officials accountable. And there's multiple ways in which you can do that. Always be respectful, but you can hold them accountable at the ballot box, right? You can also hold them accountable in the interim. How? By talking to them, by meeting with them, by meeting with their staff, right? By getting your friends to go meet with them, okay? And make sure that they know, as Destin said, thank them when they do the right thing. When they vote for SB 17 to stop China from coming in and buying up our resources and our land, thank them for that. Don't be the person that is always, the only time they hear from you is when you're mad at them for something you did, right? You gotta balance things out. Because they're human beings too, right? They're human beings too.
Most of
So anyways, I hope that helps. Yes, sir.
You mentioned several times showing up on the chart and what you said that the budget that they're using far exceeds what the taxpayers can keep up with. That can't keep going forever, right? What can happen? What do you think will happen if that continues?
Well, I think we're there. The thing that is going to happen is all of the things that you would expect when a government is taking too much money and is too involved in the economy, right? Texas is very heavily involved in our economy. I didn't talk about it tonight. I typically talk about it, but we spend billions of dollars on corporate welfare. What is corporate welfare? It's when the government picks winners and losers in what's supposed to be free market decisions, right? You know what that's called? It's called socialism, right? That's what that is. And so what's going to happen? Well, our economy can slow down. Small businesses will close. People will lose their homes. I mean, there's all sorts of things that can happen. Recession, all types of things. Now, who knows, right? Texas is blessed with vast resources, oil and gas, all these things that tend to bolster us. And we have a resilient people, right? We have a resilient people that are not going to put up with it, are going to continue to fight, both for themselves and their families and communities. And so there's no telling what will happen, but I can tell you we've seen throughout history when government becomes too intrusive, taxes too much, gets too involved. There is a role for government. Don't get me wrong, I'm not an anarchist, right? There is a role for government, but there is an appropriate one. And we are on the verge of, if not have already crossed over in some areas, going into the inappropriate with our state and local government. So we've got to get everyone in this room and across the state to hold these people accountable and bring us back to the nation. I'm happy to, I don't know if we're done yet. One more question? Okay. On the lobbying taxpayer. So during the regular session, SB 19 by Senator. Now it is, and things have moved fast. So during the first special session, I know we're in the second now, right? First special session, it was SB 12. Now it is SB Yes, so the House State Affairs Committee is chaired by Chairman Dan King, and both Senator Middleton's SB 13 has been referred to that committee and has not received a hearing, and Representative Mike Walcott's HB 186 has also been referred to that committee and has not received a hearing. HB 186 is Representative Walcott's bill that he's been going around the floor getting co-authors on his bill. He's now up to 7. He needs 76 to pass the bill. So he's 6 short. And then we also need the House State Affairs Committee to hear it, to vote it out, and send it to the floor. I know we're probably out of time. Destin and I are going to hang out for a little while afterwards. So if you have other questions, feel free to come up and talk to us. We'll give you our card, our cell phone number, whatever you want. And we'll talk to you all and answer your questions. Thank you all again so very much for having us.
Well, I guess how we always end our meetings is with Wes. And Wes is going to sing for us. So, let's go.
Y'all will join me? Here we go. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans, what with